drugs, it is cheaper to prevent than to treat. And the cost of care is even much more prohibitive. Mere experimenting with drugs could lead to casual consumption. The latter, which is casual consumption, also has the potential to lead to habitual consumption. Habitual consumption, on its part, almost always leads to drug dependency, and a life that is dependent on or addicted to drugs is not desirable.
We are planning to have at least one standard rehabilitation center in every zone of the country. There are a lot of things in the offing as we proceed in our activities this year. So NDLA is beckoning on stakeholders, especially the media, to support in this campaign. This year, like they have said, is people first. Our organization is people-centered, and drug demand reduction is about people.
Joining us to discuss this disturbing issue of drug use and abuse by the youth is Chuks Akamadu. He's the President, Center for Ethical Rebirth among Nigerian Youth. Surely, Chuks, thank you for joining us on Newsnight.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Now, the place to begin is the beginning.
Okay.
Okay. Now, speak to us about taking a people-centered approach to drug policies with a focus to human rights.
Well, talking about people-centered approach, if you ask me, that's the way to go. The way to go in the sense that drug abuse, as we find it in this country today, is a hydra-headed monster that requires active collaboration of critical stakeholders. Anything less than active collaboration of critical stakeholders will not yield the desired result. And when we talk about critical stakeholders, of course, we are talking about the family unit, we're talking about the community, we are talking about religious institutions, we're talking about educational institutions, we're talking about government, generally speaking, state actors and non-state actors. And of course, when you talk about the menace of drug abuse and illicit trafficking, you also find that saying that it should be people-centered, of course, goes beyond this named stakeholders. It involves active collaboration amongst the three tiers of government and also among the three arms of government. Talking about the three tiers of government, of course, you'll be talking about the federal government and subnationals. Subnational, state government, and of course, the local governments. The way things stand now, because this has become an epidemic that is actually threatening to consume all of us, it is a malice that the federal government alone cannot combat. It will have to go into active collaboration with the state government and local government so that those tiers of government would also do their bit. Talking about the arms of government too, which is also critically important. The federal government, the executive arm of government, of course, implements the law. It needs a very supportive legislature to make the right laws that will take care of all of this. Apart from the legislature, we also need the active support of the judiciary in the area of speedy dispensation of justice as regards drug and drug-related cases before law courts. So the people would have to own this fight against drug abuse. It is not something that the government alone can prosecute successfully because government, they are just the state actors. Non-state actors would have to show adequate commitment to this cause because you cannot clap with one hand. Because it's one thing for government to come up with very beautiful laws, just like the NDLA Act that has just been amended by the 9th National Assembly. Beautiful. The legislature has done its part. Of course, at the moment, it's waiting the assent of the president to come into force as an act of the National Assembly. But it's one thing for you to have a law that subsists and another for you to have a willing society that would support its enforcement and make sure that the area of compliance is actually taken care of.
All right then, Chuks. It's also disturbing that the market forces of demand and supply are also fueling drug abuse and illicit trafficking. How do we approach this menace from the angle of the market forces of demand and supply?
God will bless it. This is what has always been our focus as a civil society organization, because we keep arguing that, come on, NDLEA is doing its very best so far as regards drug demand, drug supply reduction, because it has the mandate to enforce laws. You can enforce laws that have to do with drug supply, but you cannot enforce laws. You cannot enforce anything that has to do with the appetite or desire for consumption of drugs. So what do? That's one area that we insist that has very obvious gaps. The area of drug demand reduction. How do we curtail and contain the appetite, the desire of our teeming population to abuse drugs? That is where we think that the federal government would have to show leadership in the area of bringing civil society organizations, bringing religious organizations and other stakeholders on board to complement its efforts, because federal government is doing pretty well, especially under the leadership of General Buba Marwa, OFR, who is now the chairman, chief executive of NDLEA. No doubt they've done incredibly well, and they deserve a pat on the back. NAFDAC too is doing very well, and if you watch, since Marwa came on board, you would have found that even the Nigerian Customs Services, the Nigerian Customs Service, Nigerian Immigration Service, they've been up and doing it. Even the Nigerian Armed Forces have suddenly realized that they are also key stakeholders in this whole thing. That's good in the area of curtailing drug trafficking, illicit drug trafficking in this country. But come on, how do we cut down on the appetite, the desire to consume all of this? That is where all of us now have to play a role, including the media. And I must say that it's good that media outlet like yours is giving this issue such prominence and all of that. You're playing your role. That is quite commendable. But we have professional organizations. We have private organizations where we also have Nigerians who take drugs, and these drugs, apart from affecting the well-being of the individual, it also affects the productivity of individual at work.
Absolutely.
What still? It also affects the security situation of the country. Of course, it affects the stability of the nation and all of that. So everybody is involved. Everybody is affected. We should stop living in denial and find a way of getting everybody on board to ensure that this whole thing is at least arrested, and then we now think of how best to reverse this ugly trend.
Chuks.
Otherwise, it's going to consume all of us, except there is a concerted effort amongst all of us to make sure that we arrest it, we reverse this trend, and God willing, we win the war against drug abuse and illicit trafficking.
Is that a good place to say amen?
The amen has to come. The amen has to come
Chuks,
with hard work.
Chuks, you see, time will not permit us to talk about the economic implications, but I'm glad you touched on it. I must say a big thank you to you for your insight and your effort, the work you're doing to cut down on drug abuse and
illicit, no other edition other than this.
Trafficking. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Chuks Akamadu is the president of Center for Ethical Rebirth among Nigerian youths, Sierra Leone.